Hello everyone and welcome back to a brand new Football Manager 2017 experiment. This one is one where what we're going to do is apply £1 billion cash to a non-league team, and then we're going to see what happens to the club. Now, as the game goes forward, various things could come through. One of the big things that will impact this is actually financial fair play, because the club will be limited in how much it can spend based on its income, because obviously it won't want to exceed certain debt levels. So it's not a guarantee of instant success. I mean, it's very, very likely they'll shoot up the leagues incredibly quickly, because I don't think they have financial fair play in non-league. But it will also take time for the club to change the transfer budgets, because if we take a look at the club we're using, FC United of Manchester, they are currently in the National League North, the sixth tier of English football, as I understand it. They finished 13th there last season, and at the moment what we've changed is just their finances. So their general everything is fine, their facilities exactly where they were, very, very poor, with a small stadium, but their finances, £1 billion in the bank. They're still a semi-professional club. They do have a front-end sugar daddy, which is another thing that I've changed, because I want to basically give the club as much financial resource as I can at the start of the game. They've also got no change to their transfer budget and no change to their wage budget. So I think that means that unless the board offers to increase them, they could be stuck with these for the first season. So there's a chance that they won't actually get any progression in the first year. Otherwise, nothing has changed at the club. The management's the same, the players are the same, and we'll just have to see how they go. Now, my idea for the progression of this experiment is we'll go 5 years at a time, because I'm expecting some rapid changes. So we'll go forward 5 years now, we'll see where they are. In theory, they could be as high as the Championship by the time we come back. So we'll take a look, see where they get on, and see any changes to their facilities, which players they're buying, in just a minute. Well, that's a bit of an anticlimax. We are now 5 years in the future, and they've actually got relegated. They're now in the regional Premier divisions. They got relegated in 16-17, I think, and they've been down there ever since. They actually got relegated again in 1920, so they must have come back up that season after getting relegated, and got relegated immediately again. We're now the year after that, and they're still in the regional Premier divisions, which is the seventh tier of English football. So we're going to have to wait to see if they pop back out of the lower leagues, because it means, I think, that the club is completely frozen for the period of time that it's outside of the leagues, and they've been out of the games leagues for a little while now. Now, I could have loaded in the lower league database so that we could go much, much further down, and I might do that in a future experiment, but that wasn't the idea behind this one. I wanted to sort of give them a sort of 10-15 year window to see how far they can grow. Now, if we have a quick look at their transfer history, we might be able to see if they've actually spent any money whatsoever. We've got the 2021 season where they spent just £6,000, and then we've got the 1920 season. They brought a lot of players in, and then nothing happened, just players going out before that. They didn't bring anybody in their first season, which is why they will have got relegated, because they clearly wouldn't have had any money available. Now, if we take a look at their club details and see, nothing's changed here, facilities exactly the same, and the finances, they've still got £841 million in the bank, and they've got a huge transfer budget as well, but they can't spend it until they're active in the game again. Their sugar daddy switched to a back-end sugar daddy, and they've got a huge wage budget as well, but they just can't spend the money because they're not an active team. So what we will do, I think, is we will go forward 5 more years. We'll see if they've been reactivated, and if not, we might have to just scrap this experiment. But I'll see you in 5 years' time, and I'll see where they're getting on. Well, we are now 10 years in the future. They've still not done an awful lot, but they are active as a club again. They got back into the national leagues in the 23-24 season and immediately finished first, because they will have spent the money. They then, the year after, got promoted in first place in the Vanarama National League. So they are now a league club, which is good to see, because it means that they are finally on the rise. 2 consecutive promotions. If we take a quick look at their club details, you can see their reputation's still not changed that much, but their facilities have had quite a big chunk of investment. They've expanded the stadium by a couple of thousand as well, I think, and their finances are still pretty strong. They're nearly up at that £800 million mark in the bank. I imagine most of that money is going out through taxes and various other stuff, interest payments, and putting the money into facilities as well. But they've now relegated the sugar daddy down to an underwriter, from front end to back end, now underwriter. It'll be interesting to see if he goes all together. But at the moment, they've still got the money in the club. Now, if you take a look at their transfer history for the last couple of years, this was roughly when they started to become an active club again. There was no money going in and out, and then they signed a whole raft of players. They must have become an official club at this point, but they probably don't really need to spend any money. They spent 900k, which is a lot of money for a team in the 6th tier of English football. Buying Pat Amu for 575 grand was quite an expense, to be honest. He's since moved to Brentford after 2 decent seasons at the club. And then Mark Lewis Barry was brought in for 325k. He is still at the club, still playing an awful lot of games, doing quite well for them. But because they've got such a big wage budget, they can afford to just keep getting players in without having to worry about whether they keep them or having to buy players. And when you're in the low leagues, free transfers tend to be a better option than buying players anyway. The year after that, they got promoted. And you can see they did spend a bit more money, £3.1 million spent by a conference club. Interesting, they had Jock Cole back at the club for a little bit. If we have a look at his career stats, he spent 2 years there, doing very, very well, as you might expect him to. But other players, if we look at the money spent, you can see that £1.2 million for Leon Burns, their biggest transfer, but quite a few around the 500k mark, a bit of money on some other players. They're starting to establish themselves as a force. Leon Burns, 24-year-old left-back, is clearly head and shoulders above everybody else, although he struggled in League 2 this season, which is interesting. Did very, very well in the National League. But overall, they are spending money, £3.1 million put into transfers. A year after that, just 650k. Now, this is their first season in League 2, and they've not spent the money at all. Only player of any value, Greg Carand, I think that is. Carand, not sure how you pronounce that. But he looks like a very good goalkeeper, although he really didn't do well this season. And 95k went out of the club as well, so they did have some players leave. But right now, they are doing reasonably well. 20th in Sky Bet League 2 is a little bit disappointing. If we take a look at their schedule, going back a couple of years, you'll see they were only in FA Cup duty these years because they weren't an active club. Then they got back into the National League North. They did very well in pre-season, had a rocky start, but then started to find their winning streak. Getting knocked out the FA Cup third qualifier round didn't help, but they put together a very nice winning streak, had a few draws along the way, but ultimately they carried themselves through to the top of the league. The next year in the National League, again, doing very, very well. A lot of wins, some defeats thrown around in there, which is to be expected in a league as difficult as this. But the patches of wins are what carried them through into league football. But they have struggled in League 2. Their going professional has clearly had a bit of an impact. They finished 20th this season, which I think means they are safe. I will double check, but it's been a very tough season for them. And as you can see, they were safe. Only 2 clubs get relegated, so they should be perfectly safe, and they'll probably spend quite a bit of money next season to help push them up the league. But I think financial fair play does start to be a factor here, which could really impact their ability to spend money. It might not be until they make the Premier League or Championship that they can really pump the money into the club. So definitely something to look at in the future. Overall, they're doing reasonably well right now. I think that probably will be it for this episode. I'm not sure what else I can really check out because not that much has actually happened, even though it's 10 years later. But if there are things that you'd like me to take a look at, do let me know. I am planning to do another part to this experiment, which will probably come out on Sunday, I would imagine. So keep your eyes open for that. Drop a like on the video if you've enjoyed this experiment. Let me know in the comments what you think will happen 5 years from now, which is how far we'll go in the next experiment. And don't forget to subscribe so you get the notification when the video goes up. But until next time, see ya.